We're searching
All right.
for truth.
How you doing, y'all?
The quiet answer stays inside. You are probably right, it cuts, but it heals. It stings, but it feels.
That's right.
You are probably right, I'm born to the cure, the pain and the sure. From gliding to ignite, we're finding the way. From biting to inside, what shallows give way. You are about it right.
All right. What's up, y'all? This is MCM, and you're listening to MCM on You're Probably Right podcast. This is a little bit different for me still. I have no issue using the camera. I have no problem being in front of the camera. I don't really have a face for the camera, as I've said one time before. The only thing is that out of my 300 and now, well, this is my 358th, but technically on the internet it says I have about 360 episodes of You're Probably Right podcast. There were some shorts and a few other things mixed in there, so that's why I don't really say that there's 363. So this is actually episode 358. The topic, or should I say the title, is What Do Average Men Really Want from Women? What women are missing. And the reason why I've phrased it that way is because there is a previous one. I think it was episode 349 where I talked about this topic at length, but I think I missed a few things, so I figured I would just get back in there. Again, this is my third episode where I'm actually on camera. For those of you who are just listening by audio, it is generally an audio only podcast, but I just wanted to mix it up a little bit. I don't know. Everybody else seems to be doing a podcast online or on video these days, and maybe that's something that people need. I don't know. I don't know if anybody really cares what I look like or to see me on screen. Honestly, I don't know, but I figured I would just mix it up a little bit. I think generally I do want it to maintain its audio only type of vibe, because to tell you the truth, this is the type of podcast, because it is only one person, it's only me who's doing the podcast episodes. The thing is, I kind of make it with the person in mind who is driving a car, not looking at a video. The person who's sitting at the beach, for the person who's doing the laundry, the person who's just going for a walk, walking the dog, commuting on the train, plane, buses, and you know what I mean? So that's why I don't really think it's that important for you to see me. Plus, I kind of want you to pay attention to what I'm saying rather than what everything looks like. You know what I mean? I don't have an amazing scenery for you to look at. I mean, maybe I would show you the flowers that my mom planted years ago before she passed away. That would be kind of cool to look at possibly, but they're pretty much dying anyways. But again, it's more of what I say than what it looks like. I want you to see yourself in these episodes. I don't really care if you see me. So understand that I do prepare a pretty well organized episode each time, and I do have a script in front of me, and I do at the same time veer off from script when something really is important, and I kind of want to maybe I didn't write it out exactly how I wanted it, so then something else will hit me and I'll say, oh, I didn't say this or I didn't say that, so then I'll veer off. So if I'm not giving total eye contact to the camera, there is a reason, because I have a script right in front of me. Okay, anyhow, that being said, here we go. So something happened after my last episode. It honestly, it surprised me. People listened, and I don't mean, no, I mean actually people listened to what I said. And the reason why I could tell, and it wasn't just for a couple minutes, you see, they stayed with it. They shared it. They messaged me. They argued with me. Some agreed. Some thought I was completely wrong. But almost everyone seemed to have one thing in common. So today, that's exactly what we're going to do today. Okay, because after I finished the episode, I realized something. I wasn't wrong. I just wasn't finished. Let me put my glasses back on. See, all this stuff for the audio only listeners is kind of bothersome because I know that generally people can't see me, so I don't say things that would throw you off if you're only listening. Anyways, whatever. So, anyways, I just wasn't finished. There were ideas I left on the table, questions I should have asked, things I watched for years and that I actually connected together until I didn't connect until after I turned off the camera and I realized, I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything about that, not camera, microphone. See, guys, I'm getting all flustered doing this. I think I got the wrong glasses. Where's my other glasses? I guess you get an experience when somebody's on camera, right? So you see all the little nonsense that they do. At least you realize that it's a real person because with AI taking over, it's like you're not sure what you're getting anymore. That is better. All right, then. Let me go. Let me continue. Okay. So now, before anybody gets upset, you're probably already upset because I've been rambling on, let me tell you who I'm talking about. Because people online have a habit of hearing one sentence and deciding they already know, where you're going and what you're saying, for sure. I'm not talking about billionaires, first of all. Okay, so when I'm talking about what men want, I'm not talking about the guy that can buy you a country. I'm not talking about Elon Musk. I'm not talking about anybody remotely like that. I'm not talking about celebrities. I'm not talking about athletes who make 17 million a year. Not those people. Those guys are on a total different level. And I mean, if you're looking for someone like that, good luck, because you might find them, but chances are they got a couple of you or more. Just saying. Okay. So as I said, I'm not talking about billionaires. I'm not talking about celebrities, although those people are normal people and life has its ups and downs. So you never know where you are when you're listening to this. I don't really know. I'm talking about the average Joe. I'm not talking about the guy with 6 businesses, 3 rental properties, and a Ferrari in the driveway. I'm talking about the average man. The man who gets upset for random things, that man who doesn't get upset for random things. I'm talking about the guy who gets up in the morning, every morning, and goes to work. I'm talking about the electrician, the plumber, the nurse, the mechanic, the caretaker, the teacher, the guy driving the forklift, the man working in the construction, the technician, the office worker, the teacher, just the random, every guy cutting your grass, the man trying to save a little money so that hopefully he has enough left over so that maybe he can take his family out every once in a while. That's who I'm talking about. Because here's what I keep noticing. Is this thing taping still? Yes, it is. All right. Here's what I keep noticing. Women have become very comfortable telling men exactly what they want. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. So this is an episode for men and women, by the way, just in case. See, nothing's wrong with that. You want a man with ambition. Makes sense. So say it, right? If you want a man who has all kinds of different things, I guess you should say it and say what those things are. If you want a man who's kind, say it. If you want a man who's protective, say it. If you want a man who earns a good living, say it. People are allowed to have standards. But here's the question I don't hear asked often. Are those standards built for the everyday man who's actually living today? Or are they built for a picture of a man that fewer and fewer are like these days, and fewer and fewer are able to become these days? That's the conversation I want to have. Not because women are wrong, not because men are always right, but because I think men and women are talking past each other. Women are saying, this is what I want. Men are saying, This is what I'm trying to build. And somewhere in the middle, they're missing each other. That's what I want to go on and talk about today. So first of all, when the rules change, expectations usually should too. So let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that we spend a lot of time talking about what women want in a man, but we spend almost no time talking about whether those expectations were built for the world we're actually living in today? Think about that for a second. I'm not saying women should have no standards or shouldn't have standards. Everybody should have standards. I'm asking something different. Have the rules of life changed while our expectations have stayed the same? Because from where I sit, not physically, but from where I sit, that's exactly what happened. Years ago, right? Whether people like it or not, men and women generally occupied different spaces in the workforce. And that's if they were both in the workforce in the first place. Men dominated a lot of higher paying jobs, physical jobs. Women certainly worked. My mother did. But many occupations were still overwhelmingly male or overwhelmingly female. You know, doctors, lawyers, teachers, nurses, secretaries. Walk into almost any workplace. You'll see women driving buses, women operating heavy machinery, heavy equipment, women working in construction, women policing the streets, women fighting fires, women working in engineering, women working in trades, women managing, women with executive positions, owners, women in healthcare, women in education. Women are everywhere. And before anybody misunderstands me, I'm not saying that's bad, although I think some of it probably is. I'm saying it changed the landscape. That's different. And when I say it's bad, or I'm not saying it, I'm saying in some respects, you know, when it comes to raising a family, women working in some of these different places is not always conducive to an actual family. And I guess some people will get argumentative and say, you know, well, women can do anything men can do. Well, to an extent, it makes sense. I don't know if you watched any cop videos lately. I don't know. I would say, honestly, look at it with a objective lens, because I think some of the positions that women occupy within the police forces don't make any sense to me. But I mean, that's just me, and I have an opinion. So anyhow, anyways, so as I said before, those things are completely opposite in a sense. If the labor market changes, right, should we at least ask whether dating expectations should change too? Because here's what I hear. I want a man who pays the bills. I want a man who owns a house. I want a man who fixes everything. I want a man with 6 figures. I want a man who has time for the family. I want a man who pays for vacations. I want a man who pays for my nails. I want a man who pays for dinner. I want a man who protects me, or who can protect me. I want a man who has ambition. Again, there is nothing wrong with wanting those things. But here's the question. How many average men are actually in the position to be all of those things by themselves? Not that, as I said, it's not that you shouldn't desire those things, right? It's just that most of us guys can't do all of those things. A lot of rich guys can't do all of those things. Rich guys get left too. And rich guys leave too. You see, the average man I'm talking about, I'm not talking about the exceptional man, because that's who I'm talking about. The average guy isn't lazy. He isn't sitting around doing nothing or just playing video games, although there are guys who do that. You see, funny thing about that is I used to play video games for a while, but then I realized I was wasting time. So then I stopped. Not because I didn't like it anymore. I just stopped. I just realized that 5 hours later, it's like, what have I done with my day? And there was too many of those days. And that's when I was a lot younger. So anyways, so the average guy, he's working, he's trying, he's paying rent, he's paying mortgages if he's lucky to have a house. He's paying insurance, gas, groceries, phone bill, unexpected repairs, student loans for those who went to school, child support for others, helping with aging parents, trying to save something for retirement, trying to keep his head above water. The average man isn't living on social media. He's living in reality. And reality has become expensive, as I'm sure women know. That's why I think we've reached a point. Women have more opportunities than ever before, and that's a fact. Men are competing in labor forces or labor markets that, generally it was just men before, and that's a fact. Housing costs have risen. Everything costs more. Yet somehow, many expectations around dating haven't moved very much. That doesn't automatically make those expectations wrong, but it does make them worth talking about, because I don't think enough people are asking whether they're realistic for the average person these days. Now, here's something else I've noticed. A lot of women say, I don't need a man. Okay, fair enough. If that's true, then why is it one of the first questions still is, what does he do? How much does he make? Does he own a house? What kind of car does he drive? Again, I'm not criticizing, I'm asking. Because the question makes people think. If financial independence means freedom, right? Then shouldn't freedom also include the freedom to choose a good man who isn't necessarily earning twice as much as you make? And that's something I wondered about for a long time. And here's where I think men and women quietly see the world differently. From what I've seen over the years, right? Most average men don't walk into a room thinking, I wonder what she earns. They notice other things first. Is she kind? Okay, is she beautiful? Is she kind? Is she sexy? Is she hot? Yeah, of course, being honest. Can she hold a conversation? Does she like my jokes? Is she warm? Is she trustworthy? Does she seem peaceful? Does she seem crazy? Does she make life feel easier or heavy or lighter? Does she seem like somebody I could actually build something with? That doesn't mean money never matters. Of course it matters. Bills matter. Life matters. Reality matters. But for a lot of men, right? A woman's income isn't what creates attraction. Character creates attraction. Trust creates attraction. Peace creates attraction. The feeling that she's building with you instead of evaluating you and waiting to disqualify you and to run or rake you over the coals of their friends to see whether or not you're worthy or to see how much money, For me, those things, and for most guys, that's attraction. Of course we care about what you look like. Most of us don't like a lot of makeup. Doesn't prevent women from wearing a lot of makeup. The eyelashes, not a big fan. Fake hair, not a big fan. Fake nails, not a big fan. Most guys honestly aren't. Most guys won't say it because they just are happy to be in the room. Not me. Anyhow, listen, because if we're honest, right, I don't think money actually is the biggest issue, even for women, honestly. I think money is a cover up for something much deeper. And that's where I guess that's where I'm going to go next. Because the more I thought about this, right, the more I realized this isn't really about income at all. It's about something people almost never really admit they're looking for. The more I thought about this, right, the more I realized something. I don't actually think money is the biggest issue anymore. Money is just the thing everybody argues about because it's easy to measure, just like height. You can look at a bank account, right? You can look at a paycheck. You can look at a house. You can look at a car. Those things are visible. But underneath all that, I think people are fighting over something much harder to see: attention. Because if you really listen to what people say, they're constantly talking about attention. Women say they want a man who notices them. I want to say there's so many women who just love being noticed, like even when they have a man, but that's a whole other story. They want a man who pursues them, who makes them feel special, who chooses them. Men say they want a woman who doesn't make them compete with the rest of the world. And I don't know if women understand what that is, but I'll just leave it out there. Do you see what's happening though? Both people are talking about attention. They're just describing it differently. Here's something I've noticed over the years. There was a time when if a woman was interested in another man, she'd actually have to meet him. Maybe at work, maybe through friends, maybe at church, maybe at the bar, maybe at school. Today, she can meet him while she's sitting on the couch. She can meet him while she's in the bathtub. She can message one, follow, a reaction, a comment, one private conversation. Technology didn't create attraction. People have always been attracted to each other. Technology created a lot more access, and that's different. And here's the question I don't hear many people asking. If you're building a life, right, with one person, how much access should the rest of the world have to them? I'm not talking about locking anybody in the house. I'm not talking about controlling somebody's cell phone. I'm talking about something much, much simpler. Boundaries. Because boundaries are what protect valuable things. Think about it. You lock your front door, right? Not because you hate people, not because you're antisocial, because your home matters. You lock your car, not because everyone's a thief, because your car has value. You protect your bank account with passwords. You protect your identity. You protect your children. So why do people suddenly act surprised when someone says, I think relationship needs boundaries as well? Now let me say something that I know some people won't like. I don't think most average men are impressed by thousands of followers. I really, really don't. And I was thinking about this the other day. I have a Facebook account, and the joke is the reason why I originally got the Facebook account was just for my podcast. It was just so that I could reach out to more people. I'd have more access to the public all over the world. I didn't just have to depend on the people I see from city to city or wherever I am. You know what I mean? So again, I'm talking about the average man. I'm talking about the average guy trying to build one life with one woman. When he hears that a woman has 5,000 followers, right? Or 10,000 followers, or thousands of men like her pictures or every picture, his first thought usually isn't, wow, I'm lucky. A lot of the time, his first thought is, that's a lot of voices. That's a lot of eyes. That's a lot of opinions. That's a lot of men who now have direct access to somebody I'm trying to build a private life with, a private relationship with. Again, I'm not saying followers make someone a bad person. Please don't hear something I'm not saying. I'm asking a different question. What purpose are they serving? Because if you're looking for one serious relationship, right? Why do you need the constant attention of hundreds or thousands of strangers? The real question is not an accusation, it's a question. And before somebody says they're just followers, sometimes they are, right? Sometimes they're customers, sometimes they're friends, sometimes they're family. I'm not pretending as if every follower is a problem. But let's not pretend attention doesn't change people. It does. Imagine, you put on a dress and you say, honey, does this dress make me look fat? And he says, yeah, it does. And he's honest. Most guys are not going to be that honest. But then you put the dress on, you take a picture and you send it to your followers and you get 4,000 likes and 7,000 comments. How much weight does your man really hold in that conversation? You got to answer that for yourself. You see, human beings respond to attention. We always have, we always will. Validation feels good. Being noticed feels good. There's nothing wrong with admitting that. The question is whether the attention starts becoming something you depend on. Because dependence changes behavior. If you depend on it, you're going to do what you can to maintain it, and you're going to encourage it in a positive way. And in a positive way means you're going to try to appeal to the masses rather than your little dude at home. Here's another thing. I've watched a lot of people say that they want one person, but they quietly build a life that keeps hundreds of options within reach. Old boyfriends, old girlfriends, old relationships, people they dated for a month, people they talked to for a month, people they text for 2 months, people they have kissed, people who still send birthday messages or money every year, people who always seem to appear whenever the relationship gets a little bit difficult or is a little bit off. They just pop up out of nowhere. And then we call them just friends. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. The point isn't to become suspicious of everyone. The point I'm asking, or the point I'm trying to get to is, are we really being honest about what we're doing? You see, if this relationship is my future, why am I still preserving so much of my past? That's not a question for women. Men need to ask themselves the same exact question, because a lot of the time in those comments are men who have women. I've seen something else over the years. Relationships rarely fall apart because of one dramatic moment. Most of the time, they erode. Slowly. A little more attention from somewhere else, a little less attention at home, a private joke, a conversation that goes a little too far or too long, someone who suddenly understands you better than your partner does. Nobody wakes up one morning planning to destroy a marriage. Most people drift, one thing at a time. That's why I think people misunderstand jealousy as well. Sometimes jealousy is insecurity. Absolutely. Sometimes it's manipulation. Absolutely. But sometimes it's somebody noticing that emotional boundaries have quietly started moving. Those aren't all the same thing. And if we treat every concern as insecurity, we stop asking whether someone's concerns are actually pointing to actually something that's real. I think this is where the average man and the average woman often misunderstand each other. A woman may think it's only Instagram, it's only a coworker, it's only a message, it's only a joke, it's only lunch. He was just eating with me, right? I didn't want to eat alone. He's my friend. It's only a follow. The average man isn't always reacting to the individual event, really. He's reacting to the pattern. He's asking himself, where does this road actually lead? Because he's seen enough life to know that every few betrayals begin with betrayal. They begin with permission to stay in touch, permission to keep old doors open, permission to enjoy attention that should have remained harmless, permission to slowly let someone else become emotionally important. And that's what worries him. Not because he's weak, not because he's controlling, because he's watched it happen before, and he's trying to protect what he has and what he's a part of. Maybe to someone else, it might seem a little off, but for himself, he's like, this is my woman. This is who I want to be with. She says she wants to be with me. Well, then hopefully my opinion matters. Hopefully you care how I feel as well. Maybe because he was once the other man and he knows about playing the long game, right? Maybe because he was once a husband. Maybe because he knows how ordinary people slowly become extraordinary mistakes. And that leads me to something I want women to honestly think about, and maybe you don't really hear often. It's not that men want less from women. It's that men are looking for something that can't be measured on a dating profile. They're looking for someone who makes commitments feel safer, not more complicated. And that's where I think we've completely misunderstood each other. And leaving, of course, my script for a second, the one thing I remember in one of the Rocky movies, I don't know if you remember, Rocky, I think he was scared to fight. I think he was going to fight Clubber Lang. I think it was Rocky 3 or whatever it is. He was going to fight Mr. T. And what's his name? Apollo Creed, played by Carl Weathers. He said, what are you afraid of? Right? And one of the I think everybody can probably not agree. Everybody else, we all can identify. There you go. We can all identify with Rocky when he says, because I don't want to lose what I've got. And I know a lot of people, if you're looking about a relationship, you're thinking, okay, so he's controlling. He thinks he owns her. It's not that. It's like locking your door, or me locking my door. I'll use me for instance. I said to somebody one day, I said, you know what? I can give anybody anything I have. Like literally somebody I worked with one time, he said, I really like those shoes. I used to have them as a kid, and I never was able to afford them. And, that's why I buy shoes now and this, that, and the other. And I said, you know what, man? We're both the same size. Here, take the shoes. And I literally stepped out of my shoes. I said, I got another pair of shoes. I'm going to wear those home. You can have these ones. You know what I mean? And I was willing to give it up. Like I could look around my house and I honestly can say there's virtually nothing that I have that I couldn't just say, here you go. But those are things. This is a relationship. This is something with someone you care about. This is the most important person in your life, and you want to guard it because we are guys and we know what guys are like. I don't want to hit that too hard on the head, but I'm pretty sure I did. Anyway, Men notice that women often don't, or men notice that women often don't think about. And I'm going to get into that, of course. I shouldn't have read the title here. Listen, let me ask you a question. Have you ever noticed that men and women often think they're being judged on the same things when they're actually being judged on completely different things? I'll give you an example. I've heard women say for years, I've got a good job. I own my own place. I've got my career together. I make good money. Good. Those are good things. You should be proud of that, for real. But here's the question. Who told you those were the things most men were looking for or care about? Your dad? Your brother? Your uncle? Your teacher? Because from what I've seen, from what I know, a lot of women have been taught to become the kind of person that women admire, without stopping to ask whether those are the same things or the same qualities that the average man noticed first. Again, I'm talking about the average man, not a billionaire, not a celebrity, not the man collecting women like trophies. The average man, not the hoe, not the guy who's had sex with 100 women, not that person. Here's what I've noticed. A lot of average men don't sit around wondering what your salary is. That doesn't mean that they don't respect your career or they don't care at all. It doesn't mean they don't admire hard work. It simply means that that's usually not what makes them fall in love with you. I can't say that for women, but I can honestly say that for men. We notice different things. Can she bring peace into my life? Does she nag me, or is she going to constantly nag me or drive me nuts? Can she laugh? Can she admit when she's wrong? Can she solve problems with me together? Can we disagree without turning every disagreement into a courtroom or a battlefield? Can she be trusted? Does she build, or does she constantly compare? Is she jealous of her friends because her friends have something that she doesn't? Or does she care that her friend's husband does this and I only do that? Those are the things guys care about. Those are things I've heard men talk about. The reason why guys get into a certain thing measuring contest is not because they care what the other guy has. It's they want to know whether or not that they're giving enough to their woman. It's not because they care what any other guy has. Most guys are not jealous in that way. Not whether you're an executive, not whether you have 3 degrees or a master's or graduates or whatever you guys call it, or a doctorate. Those things are impressive and those do show a lot and they do impress people for sure, but they don't automatically create intimacy. And there's something else I've watched happen, I guess. Social media has convinced a lot of people that visibility equals value. The more followers, the more desirable, the more likes, the more important, the more comments, the more successful. But I don't think that's how a lot of average men think. If anything, some men become more cautious, not because they're intimidated, because they're asking themselves a practical question. How many people have already had access to this person's attention? And that's different. Not to mention the stuff that's being posted online. You know, I was looking online today. I was checking my my page for my podcast, and of course stuff comes up to my feed like everybody else's. And this woman was holding a sign, and the sign says, The only women, oh, sorry, the only men that want to talk to me are men who have wives. I'm like, really? So you're telling me those are the only guys that are looking, not guys that don't have a woman. Those guys don't want to talk to you, just the guys that are married. And then I realized, you know what? It had to be a ruse. There's no way. So I clicked on the profile. I saw the usual sexy pictures, booty pictures, and all that other stuff in tight dresses and this, that, and the other. Sure. And then I said, oh, there's a link to an Instagram. I click on the Instagram. The woman has 55,000 followers. And then for me, it's just frustrating. And it's not that I was interested. I wasn't interested in the slightest, regardless of the followers. But I'm like, people are just posting stuff for posting's sake. There was another one who had 70,000 and they were saying something else that, like, just when people say stuff, it's like, oh, really? Oh, I feel bad for you. Only perverts and womanizers want to talk to you. Then you go on their, you go on their profiles, you find out it's just a big lie. And it's like, not everybody's going to do that extra click. Some people are like, oh, poor thing, and leave her some nice comment and stuff like that. But it's just like, the attention seeking and the lies that are out there is just crazy. And maybe it's just me. I mean, maybe you're younger than me, so you're like, well, no, this is normal. You just have to know how to go through the weeds and decipher what's true. I don't have time for all that, honestly. I'm trying to live a normal life, a real life. But anyways, so anyhow, let me move back to this. So, and it's not only Instagram, guys. It's everything on social media. Listen, if your phone demands more emotional energy than your relationship, is it really just Instagram? If you wake up looking for validation before you even say good morning to the person beside you, is it really just social media? If strangers know more about your relationship than your closest friend, is it really just posting? Those are the questions I think that people should ask and are worth asking. Here's another thing. I think many women underestimate men notice patterns. Not perfection, patterns. One revealing outfit doesn't define somebody. Not to mention the filters that you put on. It doesn't define anything. All we're wondering is, do you really look like that? Is your skin really that smooth? Don't look at my skin. I know. One bad decision doesn't define somebody. One mistake doesn't define somebody. Most mature men understand that. Life happens, people grow, people change. But patterns tell stories. Patterns of needing attention, a pattern of keeping old relationships alive, a pattern of flirting just enough to keep people interested, a pattern of comparing your relationship to everyone else's online, a pattern of making private life public, a pattern of never being satisfied with what you already have. Those are things people notice, not because they're keeping score, because patterns predict future better than promises do. Anybody can make promises. Patterns are what people actually live. Now, let me say something that might make some people uncomfortable. The average man isn't usually asking, is she perfect? He's asking, can I trust the direction she's headed? And that's different, because trust isn't built on one moment. Trust is built on repeated moments, repeated honesty, repeated loyalty, repeated good judgment, repeated respect, repeated choosing. Repeated choosing, what you choose. That's how it grows, right? You know, I asked my boys, I have two sons, I asked them, and the ages, It's kind of funny. They're far from each other, but one's a teenager and one's grown. And I said, guys, what would you rather? Would you rather love or respect? Well, I'll be straight up. My younger one is 15 at the time of this podcast episode, and the other one is 29. And I asked, and they said, respect. And I was shocked. But then I kind of wonder, I kind of think, maybe when I was that age, maybe, hopefully I felt the same. Chances are maybe I didn't. I don't know. But it's like, ideally you want both. But men care about respect more, that one's for free. Anyhow, I think this is where a lot of people get wrong or go wrong in relationships. People keep trying to win arguments instead of protecting confidence. Think about that. Confidence isn't just confidence isn't just believing your partner won't cheat. Confidence is believing your partner thinks like a teammate. You see, when temptation shows up, they protect their relationship before they protect the attention. That when somebody starts crossing a line, they don't ask, how far can I go before it's technically wrong? Is this cheating? Is that cheating? They ask, what protects what I'm building with this person? That's completely different. That's a way different mindset. I've seen people destroy good relationships, not because they wanted someone else, but because they loved being wanted by someone else. Those are different things. Sometimes the relationship isn't lost because somebody wanted another person, right? Or another partner. Sometimes it's lost because they couldn't let go of feeling, let go of a feeling of being admired. Oh, that person thinks I'm sexy. He's like, huh? That's a different addiction. And social media, if we're honest, can feed an addiction like that every single day, every single hour. Oh, I got a message. Now, before the men listening get too comfortable, this isn't just a conversation for women. Men chase attention too. Men keep backup plans too. Men flirt too. Men collect followers too. Men compare their lives to other people too. Same standards apply. If you're asking someone else to protect the relationship, you better be protecting it too. Otherwise, you're asking for privileges, not partnership. And that's not what this episode is about. Because underneath everything we've talked about, money, followers, career, Instagram, old boyfriends, old girlfriends, attention, underneath all of it, I think there's a really only one question. Does this person make commitment feel safer or riskier? And that's the question. Not richer, not prettier, not more exciting, safer. Not boring, safe. There's the difference. Because when commitment feels safe, right, people build comfortably, build well. When commitment feels uncertain, people protect themselves instead of each other. And that's when the relationship slowly stops becoming home and starts becoming a negotiation. And that brings me to something I think we've almost all stopped talking about completely: sacrifice. Not because sacrifice sounds romantic, because every lasting relationship costs something. The real question is, what are you willing to give up to build one? You willing to give up friends, Instagram followers, accounts, phone numbers? Something has been bothering me for a long time. Honestly, I don't think men ask this question enough. I don't think women ask it either. Everybody keeps talking about what they deserve. Very few people talk about what they're willing to sacrifice. Think about it. Listen to almost any dating podcasts. What do you bring to the table? What are your standards? What's your body count? What do you deserve? What won't you tolerate? Fair enough. Those are reasonable conversations, but here's a question I almost never hear. What are you willing to give up for the person you say you want or the person you say you love? Because every serious relationship costs something. Every single one. You don't get everything. You choose something. And that's the difference. Let me make it practical. If you want one serious man, right? Sorry guys, I'm just checking something. Okay. If you want one serious man, right? Are you willing to give up the attention of hundreds of men? Not because somebody forced you, because you decided one relationship was worth endless options. That's sacrifice. Some might say it's not much of a sacrifice. Some would say it's a huge sacrifice. You know how long it took me to build these followers? If you're serious about marriage, right? Are you willing to stop collecting backup plans, old boyfriends, old situationships, the guy who's always been there and who's always around? I've known him longer than I've known you. Guys have heard that from the beginning of time. The man who keeps liking everything, every picture. The coworker that you eat lunch with that likes you and you know he likes you. So you keep him around almost like a toy. And he thinks he has a shot. In most cases, he has no shot. But the right argument, the right situation, the right problem in your relationship, you know he's not that bad looking. You never know. The coworker you know has feelings for you. Are you willing to close the door? Or do you just want somebody else to believe they're closed? Those are different feelings. And before the men start nodding too hard, same question. Are you willing to delete the woman who you've been keeping around just in case? The one you message when you're lonely or your wife ticks you off or girlfriend ticks you off. The one you know who would answer if things went bad. The one you tell your girlfriend not to worry about. She's ugly, honey. The woman you tell your girlfriend that she's not your type. Are you willing to give those up? Because commitment isn't measured by what you say. It's measured by what you stop doing and what you stop feeding and giving ear to or eyes to. Here's something I think social media has quietly changed. People don't just compare themselves anymore. They compare their relationships every day. Somebody's in Greece, somebody's in India, China, Japan, somebody's at the cottage, somebody just bought a new house, somebody just got engaged, somebody is having a new baby, somebody got flowers, somebody's husband surprised her, somebody's wife bought him a truck, somebody's kitchen looks perfect, somebody's kid looks perfect, somebody's kid has good marks, somebody's vacation looks perfect, somebody's life looks perfect. And then people put their own phone down, look across the room, and suddenly the person they've loved for years starts competing with highlight reels of other people's lives. You know nothing about the arguments. You don't know nothing about the dishonesty. You don't know nothing about the way it took or what somebody had to go through to get pregnant. You know what I mean? You don't know that somebody got left a cottage and had nothing to do with what you thought it had to do with. And that's really dangerous because nobody lives inside of a highlight reel. I've been thinking about this a lot. Maybe the biggest problem isn't that people expect too much. Maybe it's that people are comparing ordinary lives to extraordinary moments. Most of life isn't Bali. Most of life isn't a yacht. Most of life isn't a luxury kitchen. Most of life isn't candlelit dinners. Most of life isn't flowers every day. Although some guys do flowers every day, not very many. Most women will say it's a waste of money anyway. Most of life is it's a Tuesday. It's groceries. It's laundry. It's bills. It's work. It's kids, appointments, stress. It's traffic. Trying to stay healthy. Trying to stay connected. Trying to make each other laugh after a long day. That's where relationships actually live. Not on a vacation. Not on a hot summer's night in the middle of winter. On a Tuesday. Love going up on a Tuesday. Clubs going up on a Tuesday. And I think we're accidentally trained ourselves to believe that Tuesday isn't enough. Here's another question. When did ordinary become an insult? Think about it. People say, I don't want an average man. Okay. What exactly is average? A man who works every day? A man who pays bills? A man who pays his bills? A man who coaches his kids' hockey team or basketball team? A man who changes the oil in the car? A man who comes home every night? A man who fixes things around the house? A man who isn't famous? A man who isn't rich? A man who isn't 6'7"? A man who isn't traveling the world every month or 6'3"? Is that average? Or is that actually the backbone of our society? Because I know a lot of average men, and a lot of average men don't even have those things. This country stops functioning without average men. The truck stops moving, the lights don't get fixed, the water doesn't run, the hospitals don't operate, the roads don't get built or smoothed out, the schools don't stay open, the house frame doesn't get framed, the elevator doesn't work. The average man is carrying far more of society than people give them credit for. Now, before somebody hears this the wrong way, I'm not saying women should settle. I'm saying something totally different from that, actually. I'm asking whether social media has quietly convinced people that ordinary commitment isn't enough anymore. That if your life doesn't look exceptional, it's not good enough. I don't believe that. Some of the happiest couples I've ever met live ordinary lives. No followers, no podcasts, no matching SUVs, no staged anniversary photos, just two people. They built something quietly, faithfully, year after year. And maybe that's something unfashionable these days. Maybe consistency doesn't get enough likes. Maybe loyalty isn't exciting enough for the algorithm. Maybe privacy doesn't go viral. Maybe I'll tell you something I've learned. Most people build remarkable relationships most people don't build remarkable relationships by chasing remarkable moments. They build them by protecting ordinary days. That's where love actually lives. Not in proposals, not in the wedding, not in the honeymoon. In the ordinary Tuesday, nobody posts. So maybe before we ask, what do I deserve? We should ask, what am I willing to protect? Because love isn't just Oh, my back. Love isn't just choosing someone, it's choosing the life that comes with them, including the ordinary parts, especially the ordinary parts. And I think that that's where I probably should finish this conversation. Where have I hit? An hour. My goodness. Because listen, after everything we've talked about, right? Followers, money, careers, attention, expectation, there's really only one question left. What kind of person makes building a life possible? Not exciting for the weekend, possible for 30 years. Not the best sex of your life, possible, possible for 30 years, 40 years. That's the question I want to leave with you. You know, after thinking about this, right? After the last episode on this topic, after reading messages, after thinking about conversations I've had over the years, I realized something. I don't actually think the average man is asking for very much. I think he's asking for something that becomes surprisingly rare these days. He's looking for somebody who helps him build a life, instead of somebody who constantly is evaluating whether their life is good enough or whether there's a better one somewhere else. And there's a difference. One person is building, the other person is shopping. Those are two completely different mindsets. I think we've reached the point where people spend so much time asking, am I getting enough? That they've almost forgotten to ask, am I giving someone enough confidence to build with me? Because confidence, real confidence, doesn't come from promises. It comes from patterns. It comes from knowing that when life gets difficult, the person beside you will still be beside you. Not because they don't have other options, but because they've made you a decision and you are the only option. You know, I hear people talk about chemistry all the time. Spark, butterflies, excitement. That's first feelings, man. Those things are real. I felt them too. But you know what I've learned? Chemistry might start a relationship. Character is what keeps it alive and keeps it going. Anybody can be exciting for 6 months. Anybody can be charming for a year. Anybody can be interesting while they're trying to win somebody over because you have a goal and it's attainable if you just keep it going. You know what I mean? Real life starts after that. After you got them, after you put the ring on the finger. What are you still willing to do? Or what are you deciding to close off or stop doing? When somebody gets sick, when money gets tight, when the kids arrive, when the mortgage payments go up, when interest rates go up, when one person loses their job, when somebody's parents need help or die, when life stops looking like Instagram and starts looking like Tuesday. And that's when character shows up. I think the average man is asking for that, just a Tuesday life. I could have used Wednesday or Thursday. You get it, guys. I don't think the average man is asking for perfection. I think he's asking for peace. Not silence, peace. There's a difference. Peace is knowing he doesn't have to wonder who's in your messages. Peace, he knows he doesn't have to compete with strangers for your attention. Peace, he knows he doesn't have to become somebody else just to keep the relationship. Peace, he knows, peace in knowing that when you leave the house, you're still carrying the relationship with you. That's peace. And ladies, before anybody hears this as a criticism, I want you to ask yourselves one question. Not for me, for yourself. If the man you've always dreamed about walked into your life tomorrow, would your life already be prepared to receive him? Not your clothes, not your makeup, your eyelashes, not your resume, your habits, your boundaries, your friendships, your social media, your attention. What kind of pictures do you have up on social media, by the way? Because you know that the internet is for life, right? Actually, it's forever. It's beyond your life. Your attention, your priorities, would they already match the relationship you say you want? Because I think that's the question that many of us avoid. People will say, oh, well, I'll change that when I find him. Really? Try. You can try if you want to. But I know it's not always easy to quit something cold turkey. A man just wants simple in most cases. Some want extraordinary, but they want their partner to be simple. And what they say, they're really with. And what they want, they really want. And they're willing to live with what they get. And man, I gotta ask you the same questions, really. If the woman you always wanted walked into your room, or your life tomorrow, would she find a man who's ready or a man who's waiting for her to fix him, to be a mommy to him? Would she find discipline, integrity, emotional maturity, financial responsibility, consistency? Or would she find another man saying, I'll become that after I meet that right woman? That's not how it works, man. Because you got to become that person first. Maybe, just maybe, we've all spent too much time interviewing other people and not enough time interviewing ourselves. Maybe that's why dating feels so exhausting for so many people. Everybody wants an extraordinary partner. Very few people spend time trying to become an extraordinary partner. And that's really what this whole conversation has been about. Not blaming women, not defending men, not picking sides, trying to understand why so many decent people are struggling to build lasting relationships. Because I don't believe most people are evil. I don't believe most people wake up every morning saying, I want to hurt somebody. I think most people are trying to find love and to be a part of love, while living in a world that constantly rewards attention, comparison, consumption, and keeping your options open. Those things make commitment harder. Not impossible, but harder. So let me leave you with one final thought. The average man, the man I talked about from the beginning of this episode, isn't looking for a perfect woman. He's looking for a woman who makes commitment feel like a safe decision, and the safest decision that he's ever made. Not the easiest, the safest. A woman that protects what they're building. A woman who doesn't need the whole world watching her and seeing and commenting on how valuable she is. A woman who is willing to close doors, not because she's forced to, but because she has already chosen which door she's walking through. And I honestly think most average women are looking for exactly the same thing from a man. Maybe we've been describing it all these years differently. Maybe we've been arguing over the words we're using, when really we're actually searching for the same feeling. A place where both people stop performing, stop competing, stop wondering, and finally start building that home. And maybe that's what we've all been looking for all along. Anyway, y'all, I'm Michael, and this is the podcast called You Probably Right. See you next time. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Wow. That was a long one, guys. It wasn't even that long. It's the camera. I'm just being honest with you. Anyhow, till next time, y'all. Peace out.